I'm really happy our first presenter this morning is Ashley Rockwell. Ashley joins us from Georgia State University and is going to talk about public interest data literacy, empowering first-year students with data skills. Ashley?
Hello, good morning, everyone. Let me share my screen. Like Jen said, my name is Ashley Rockwell, and I'm at Georgia State University Library. I'm the Public Interest Data Literacy Fellow, and we call that for short PIDLit. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we got to PIDLit, and then what we're doing with that initiative. And so, like many other data librarians or librarians working in data, GSU offers research data services teams, workshops, course embedded sessions, data consults, and they've been doing that since 2016 out of the lead of Mandy, who is also on this call. And through this, they've offered wonderful programming to help support students and staff and faculty and whoever joins the workshops for data analysis, visualization, data management, basically anything related to the data lifecycle. However, when we looked at the data of who is attending these services, we see that it's predominantly graduate students, which makes sense because graduate students are often working on theses or dissertations and they need that immediate help. However, we would like to see more undergraduates take advantage of these resources and to use it to help them become more data literate. And so along with our wonderful research data services team and all the programming that they've been working on, we also have Data in the ATL series that has been going on, which is a speaker series focused on bringing in people who work in the Atlanta area and connecting them with students. So explaining how that they are using data at their company or organization and giving the students a chance to interact with those folks. And this has been the most successful in the sense of like grabbing undergraduates' attention. They find this interesting, and in the past this has been we're able to do this face to face. So one of the pictures in the middle there, that's one of our data in the ATL sessions, and with the Atlanta Regional Commission. And so we've in the past had companies come, so UPS, Delta, Coca-Cola, and Waffle House are all Atlanta companies, and they've been nice enough to send representatives to come talk about how they use data at their organizations. But we've also had nonprofit organizations like the United Way, the Atlanta Public Schools, and Atlanta Regional Commission. And so this has been super helpful in exposing students to employers and organizations and what those employers think are important. And so with the programming research data services has already been offering, and with the Data in the ATL series and combining that with our overall university's college to career program, which lays out explicit competencies that they believe and that they've found through working with employers that employers want in students who are going onto the job market. And so some of those things include things like data mining and visualizing data and analyzing data, being able to translate data. And so there's this clear connection that the university wants students to have these skills, and that employers want their potential employees to also have those skills. So through the Public Interest Data Literacy Initiative, we've kind of wedded all of those things together. And we've done this through a grant through New America, through their Public Interest Tech program. And so that's where the public interest part of what we're doing comes from. but we've created PIDLit with the goals of expanding data literacy for the public good. So that's the public interest aspect, which we'll get into a little bit more, but also to build a more diverse pipeline of students pursuing data careers. So it doesn't have to be that they're going to be data scientists, but they're going to, wherever career they're going to go into, that they might be using data skills. We want to make sure that we're preparing our students. And we're doing this by focusing mostly on first-year students, because they're the ones who haven't necessarily made up their mind yet. It's a lot harder to all of a sudden give students skills in their senior year, and that's a much more difficult approach to helping students. And so targeting first-year students is our goal. And so part of the reason why we think this is an important program, and at least for GSU is unique, is that at Georgia State, we are one of the most diverse, we have one of the most diverse student bodies in the United States. And with our partnership with Perimeter College, we are now the largest student body in the state of Georgia. And so we have a lot of students that we can that we should be providing great programming for, and that we should be preparing for careers. And by focusing our outreach on first-year students, we hope that we can help build that career pipeline and make it more diverse by ethnicity, race, ability, gender, and social economic status. And so I don't think I need to explain, since this is all other folks are talking about data literacy skills, why it's important, but we know it's important because so many more jobs are requiring data skills. So for that part, for getting our students hired, but also it can empower our students to give them tools to help them better understand and address social problems. And also through programming with data literacy skills, we can kind of help people overcome their fear of data and math. And so we're doing this by breaking it up into kind of a three-pronged approach. We're focusing on flexible data lessons, a special panel series targeted towards undergraduates, and data literacy workshops. And so our data lessons that we're working on, we're trying to curate special flexible data lessons for current instructors to adopt in their courses. And so we're shaping those based on those core competencies that the college to career program has laid out, but also wanting to focus on non-STEM instructors who are less likely to incorporate data and data literacy skills into their courses. We want to make it easy for them to do that. And so we're trying to build this data lessons database to make it easier for our university instructors to adopt data-driven lessons. And so we're doing that by trying to create a hub that will be searchable based on lesson type. So is the instructor looking for something that is a demo, discussion, a group activity, individual activity? Are they wanting to get a certain skill across? That is our goal, is to be able to make all these lessons searchable by what the instructor wants, and also making sure that they're flexible, that they could potentially use this same activity, but swap a data set and make it more focused to what they're doing. And then the second part is focusing on our events. So we've basically kind of revamped data in the ATL. So no longer are we bringing in corporations like Coca-Cola, but we're focusing more on the public interest aspect of this. And so we are focusing on things that are social issues that affect the Atlanta community. So tomorrow, actually, we have our first event of the semester, and we're going to be discussing how a data journalist, a lawyer for Atlanta Legal Aid, and someone who works for the Atlanta Fed and has been working on creating an eviction map, how they are using data to address evictions and equity theft. And so we're trying to focus, bring it into issues that are important to our students and important to the Atlanta community, but still linking those data skills to job skills. And another way
5
that
minutes, Ashley.
Sorry, what was that?
5 minutes.
Okay, sorry, thanks. Another way that we're linking it to our students is by focusing on things that our students are interested in already. And so our other programming through data empowered events, we're having panels that are focused on data literacy as a tool for social justice, where we're bringing in panelists from Data for Black Lives and Digi Data, and an author of a new book called Queer Data. And so we can show our students the various aspects of how data can be used as a tool for social justice. Also trying to bring in students who may not think of data as something that's related to what they're doing, the art students, through a data and art series. And so we're using these series as a way to get students, especially undergraduates, to come to these programming, to link them back to the workshops that we also had. So expose to them why data is important with something that's interesting to them, and then use that as a way to get them into our other programming. And so the third prong is our data literacy workshop series. And this is important because many of the workshops that we have provided, as I mentioned before, graduate students and faculty tend to take advantage of, but we don't see as many undergraduates. And part of this is because a lot of undergraduates don't necessarily think that those workshops are at a level for them to understand, and they need a more introductory level. And so by creating this data literacy workshop series, we are focusing on more introductory level content that first year students would be comfortable going through without needing, a statistics or data science background. And so we already have part of this series up on YouTube through our Data Ready series, which we partnered with the Student Success Program at the university to create this Data Ready series. And we are working to put all of this up on Canvas, so that way it can be linked with badges, so students can complete the series and get a badge that they can add to their LinkedIn or their resume. And so I want to get to, before we run out of time, the things that I think are most important about this project are the things that we've learned from what we've been working on so far. And so the first thing is that you have to meet the students where they are in so many different aspects. And so through this, actually, some of the people actually on this call that we've worked with, talking with, like, how to define data literacy and what does that mean? What does it mean to be working with students and for students and serving students? And the biggest thing is we need to make sure that we're their skill level. So making sure that we're adjusting our programming so that way students are comfortable with it, that it meets their needs, but also that it meets them with what they're actually interested in and passionate about. As the pandemic has happened, we also realized that their physical location becomes extremely important. Whether or not they're on campus or off campus, we have to contemplate that in how we are creating programming. Also, what we've learned is through working with employers and talking to them, and those who we've been bringing in as guests for those panels, is that they really value students with data skills. Oftentimes, for example, they'll have students who come from a social work background and who don't have those data skills. They have everything else that they want, and they have the passion and everything. But if they had those data skills, their employers are saying, they could be hired so much quicker, they could be promoted so much quicker, that's something that they value. However, those non-STEM instructors aren't necessarily educating their students with those data skills. And so that's something that is really important, is that these are wanted and needed in non-STEM fields, yet they're not being added to the current coursework. So it's a place where we can really be helpful. Also, with the pandemic and just the past few years, it's been highlighted how important data literacy is, in the sense that we are equipping our students with tools to not only use data on their own, but to be critical of how others are using data. And this can help us and help our students in preventing the spread of misinformation.
1 minute.
So in the future, we hope to have, our curated online public searchable PIDLit lesson hub where anyone can contribute to that, and so that way other people can also be using those outside of just our university. We're hoping to expand the program through focusing on the actual faculty, so training those who are uncomfortable teaching data literacy or teaching data skills, making sure that they're comfortable doing that. And then again, expanding it to other educators, so those in the K through 12 system, and hopefully creating a full credit-bearing course through our university. And so I want to also shout out to our team. We have a great team working on this. If there is anything else that you would like to learn about PIDLit, you can check out our website, pidlit.gsu.edu, or find us on social media at getpidlit. Thank you so much.
That was great. Thank you, Ashley. We do have at least 2 questions that have popped into the Q&A. Can you see those too?
Yes. Can you speak more on the grant that helped start the project? Yes, so New America has a special grant program called PIT-UN, so it's the Public Interest Tech University Network. And so their program gives grants that are related to public interest technology. And so that can mean a lot of different things. So a lot of the other grantees are focused on getting tech people to understand the public interest aspect, which is, understanding what they could be doing is potentially, ethically problematic, or so things like AI and how that can be ethically problematic are some of the other grantees. And I see Mandy just put in the chat a link to New America's PIT-UN program. However, for us, we are focusing on data literacy as the tech part and data skills as the tech part. And the public interest aspect is us making sure that we're constantly incorporating the public interest aspect to what we're doing, be that the data lessons tend to always have a public interest social issue focus, or all of our programming has this also underlying goal of building a more diverse pipeline of students with data skills, which also fits the PIT-UN's goals. And so that grant is, unfortunately, has already, I think it was due in July. And so, but next year, I'm pretty sure they'll be looking for more grantees. Your institution has to become part of their network first. So there's a kind of complex process, but I encourage you to look into it. And if you look at their list and your university is already listed, then find out who your representative is there to see how you can get involved or become part of another grant initiative with them. So can you talk about the Data Ready digital badge? Is this self-created badge, and what does it involve? Yes, so the Data Ready digital badge is created through the program Badger, which is BADGR, and it is, you can create any badge on it, but what you can do is link it to, so we're linking it to Canvas, the LMS software, just because that one allows students to self-enroll to make it easier on our part. And so when students enroll into that course and they complete all of the different aspects, so like they watch the video and take the quiz, then after they do that, they will automatically be able to, it's linked with Badger, be able to receive the badge. And so in the Badger program, it will say that it explains, you can put in all the information about what the students actually did to get that badge. So that way, when they do share it on their LinkedIn or on their resume, that someone can look at that and see, okay, this is what they did to earn this badge. You know, they spent X amount of time, and really how much that badge is worth depends on how well you create it and explain it in that little information section. Because you could just have a data badge and no explanation, and that would be, you know, less helpful to your students and whoever is going to be looking at that. Like, does this mean anything? So that's an important aspect, is making sure that you lay out what that actually means. And so we're planning on trying to implement this too with our other workshops that we provide. So students can go through, you know, a STATA workshop and get a STATA badge or something like that.
There's one more question that came up in Q&A. Is that one you think you could answer quickly?
Yes. What kind of feedback have you gotten from students and instructors? And so that's really interesting. So one of the things that, if we had more time, I would want to talk about is that video series that we created, although it's supposed to be a workshop series in the sense that, you know, they complete all of them, we broke it up into smaller video sections, and instructors have actually been using those in not the whole thing, but in parts of them. And that's where we've gotten the most positive feedback from instructors, is that they love that those videos exist. And so that's something that else we've learned, is that although we've been trying to create this lesson hub, the more short videos we can create covering some concrete data literacy concept, the more likely it's going to be utilized in the classroom. Having those short videos, instructors really respond well to that. And for the students, it's being where the students are, getting with student organizations. If you want to reach students, you need to go where the students are. You can't just like post things online. You need to be the physical locations where they're at.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ashley.
Thank you.
And now we'll go ahead and move right into our next presentation. Very happy to introduce next a team from North Carolina State University Libraries. We have Natalia Lopez, Claire Cahoon, and Michelle Leonard joining us this morning, and I'll turn it over to you next.
I'll go ahead and share my screen and we can get started.
So hello, everyone. My name is Natalia Lopez, and I'm the lead librarian for data instruction at NC State University. I'm joined by my colleagues Claire Cahoon, NCSU Libraries Fellow, and Michelle Leonard, Research Librarian for Engineering. And we had two other colleagues who worked on this project who aren't presenting with us today: Christy Borda, Research Librarian for Engineering, Sciences, and Biotechnology, and Walt Gurley, Data Visualization Analyst. Thank you to the conference planners for inviting us to share our presentation with you all today. We'll be talking about our work developing online learning modules through the Google Sites platform to support the information needs of undergraduate researchers on campus. To date, 35 certificates have been earned and over 500 users have visited the website. Next slide, please. Before we talk about how we develop the modules, we wanted to give you a little bit of context for our library and university. North Carolina State University is a leading public research university in Raleigh, North Carolina, that supports over 36,000 students across a wide range of disciplines. As part of our portfolio of high impact practices, faculty and researchers across our campuses provide research opportunities for undergraduate students. These REU, or research experiences for undergrads, happen all year round at our university, and undergraduates begin research appointments as early as the first semester of their freshman year. Next slide.
So when we approached this project, we wanted to support students developing the information research skills important to their laboratory research. And we also wanted to develop relationships with our engineering faculty. After brainstorming ways to make connections during the pandemic, we decided to conduct a listening tour. So we contacted faculty members involved in undergraduate research across all engineering disciplines through whatever method was easiest for faculty members. Some participated in Zoom appointments with us, some replied to our emails, and some filled in survey questions on a Google form. There was a tremendous interest in our proposal to support undergraduates developing information skills. And due to the pandemic, limited research was actually being performed on campus. Faculty members were still eager for undergraduates to make the most of the research opportunities, but much of the research had shifted out of the laboratories and into the information landscape. So we seized on this opportunity and the overwhelming interest. We began excitedly making plans for how to best address the needs of undergraduate researchers that faculty members had shared with us. Next slide, please. When we analyzed the input from our faculty stakeholders, we noticed there was a range of interests, but there were some common requests. Faculty members wanted students to be more familiar with all the resources and spaces in our libraries. They wanted them to become confident and independent in finding reliable information sources. They wanted them to become familiar with literature searching as a process in both understanding the scope of engineering literature on their topic and learning how to synthesize that information to make their laboratory experience richer. They also noted that students needed to understand the importance of proper citations as new members of the scholarly community. And finally, there was a very strong interest in supporting students developing good data literacy and visualization skills. So we had our work cut out for us. Making time to teach all these skills to all the undergraduate students who needed instruction was not possible, especially since students were starting this research at various times. So we quickly decided our best method to reach as many students as possible was to develop asynchronous instruction in the form of videos and infographics to support student research skills development. We knew that we wanted these resources to be arranged in a way that told a story about their journey to becoming a part of the scholarly community through their information research activity. And we also wanted the resources to be accessible at all times and open to everyone. So since North Carolina State University is a Google campus, we decided the best way for us to do this was to create a Google site. Next slide, please. So we decided on 6 main themes for our work, themes that encompass what we had heard on the listening tour and our own experiences in working with researchers. The sections for our website became an introduction to our library resources, how to search for literature, the process of becoming a member of the scholarly community, scientific communication, patents and standards, and data and visualization. And we believe that these themes encompass most of the information that is needed for new researchers to be career and research-ready engineers. Within each of these 6 sections, researchers interact with instructional materials and assessments for a variety of subtopics related to the theme. Next slide, please. So our website can be used in 2 different modes. For the first mode, it was designed as a series of learning modules that begins with a knowledge assessment, has the 6 sections that we already described, with various scaffolds such as videos, links, and infographics. And then at the end, there's a final knowledge check and assessment of the skills included in all the modules. And upon completion, students are issued a certificate. The second way we use this resource is as an on-demand reference scaffold to support our in-class instruction, research group support, and as an additional resource for consultations. Next slide, please.
So for today's talk, we wanted to dig a little deeper into the content of that 6th module, data and visualization. It's split into 3 subsections: 1, file types and finding data; 2, accessing and analyzing data; and 3, visualizing data effectively. We decided on these 3 subtopics based on the responses Michelle and Christy heard in the listening tour, and also from our own experiences teaching first-year undergrad students. Each module is composed of short activities, so they include step-by-step written instructions, as well as videos. Next slide. So file types and finding data is a short module that covers how to find data sets, the difference between open data versus subscription data, common data types, and working with zip files. Students are commonly asked to both find and access data files that can be incorporated into their research. However, our experience has shown us that many students have never really worked with a data file before and are usually unfamiliar with spreadsheets, let alone more complex data file types. This can often deter students from working with data, so we provide some basic information about file types and data repositories that can aid in orienting them to these potentially new concepts. Next slide. Accessing and analyzing data is our longest module. So it's a step-by-step guide that helps students do the same data cleaning and analysis process with 2 different tools, Google Sheets and Python. The Google Sheets section is a combination of detailed instructions and short video walkthroughs going through a few steps of working with data. They download a data set and data dictionary, then complete some simple data cleaning, such as renaming columns or removing columns, and finally do some exploring using pivot tables to answer questions. We also wanted to introduce students to the concept that the same data analysis can be completed through programming, without attempting to teach a whole programming language in an asynchronous non-credit bearing module, which would be impossible. To do this, we used a Google Colab notebook and had students observe how the same steps they had completed using Google Sheets could be replicated using Python. And just if you don't know, Google Colab is a version of Jupyter Notebooks hosted by Google, which uses a mix of code blocks and descriptive text. Most of the code is already written out for students to run, with some try it yourself sections so they can practice writing lines of code without starting from scratch. Next slide. And then our last module, Visualizing Data Effectively, talks about choosing chart types, using color, and using text to effectively communicate your findings in a chart. So while the first two modules introduce students to some of the technical skills required when working with data, for instance, opening a data file, creating a pivot table, running code, this module is really meant to introduce students to start thinking critically about design choices. When and how is it appropriate to use color in your data visualization? When should you use a bar chart versus a line chart? How many fonts should you use, and what alignment helps aid interpretation? These are important learning objectives for students as they're expected to regularly prepare presentations and papers. Next slide.
Feedback on our pilot of the website was very positive. Faculty appreciated having these tutorials available to share with students at any time. And a few went further and made completion of the modules a requirement of student researchers. The last quote on this page from Dr. Ranji Ranjathan made us rethink how we were marketing this resource. And although we went into this project with the goal of supporting undergraduate engineering researchers specifically, the information needs extended to graduate students as well. So consequently, we rebranded the website and removed any language that referred to undergraduates specifically. And we also expanded the scope to all early career STEM researchers. Next slide, please. So feedback from the students was gathered through our final assessment of the module. We asked them 4 questions. What was your biggest takeaway? How could this workshop be improved? And are there any skills and resources that you would like us to include? And also, do you have any additional comments? And there were a wide range of responses about students' biggest takeaways, which is great because we believe we created something that was helpful to everyone who has completed our modules. We had also asked how the workshop could be improved, and some of the common comments included broadening the scope of the modules beyond engineering, more information on Zotero and specific databases, and one of the most repeated comments was wanting more depth on data and visualization portions. Students also shared that there was an overwhelming amount of information in that section for them to unpack. And we get it. Data is a very complicated topic. The Data and Viz team joined us in addressing the student requests as we began revising our pilot project and readying it for a full launch. Next slide, please.
So we took that constructive criticism. We made some revisions during this past summer of 2021 in preparation for the fall semester that we're currently in. And like Michelle said, the common comments were things like the final sections on data and visualization being kind of overwhelming. There's a lot of information there, and specifically that video examples would be helpful. So that's what we prioritized in this revised version. We edited down and simplified the text, which meant even short paragraphs became shorter bullet points. We edited down the amount of content we were trying to cover in each section. And then we added video demonstrations of the step-by-step instructions we provided for activities. So in places where we gave those step-by-step instructions, I recorded a screen share of myself reading out the instructions and completing them so that they could see the instructions, read them, and also hear them, depending on how they wanted to access that information. That meant that our step-by-step instructions, which could be kind of long and overwhelming to look at, we were able to put those in collapsible sections with instructions on how to access the text and the videos so that people could really choose, but also take in the whole page at once without being overwhelmed by the amount of content. And then finally, we worked to match our formatting and structure to the rest of the modules to make a more unified experience for students using the modules.
5 minutes.
Thank you. So here we have an example of some of those revisions. And of course, don't worry about reading the text. This is just to show you some of our formatting examples. On the left, you can see a before image. There's a lot of text, a lot of words. It's a lot to look at. And just to get a screenshot on here, it is too small to read. So we understand that that's kind of overwhelming. Our revised version on the right, we've cut down the explanatory paragraph to just one sentence and then a bullet point trying to clearly explain what needs to be done to complete this section. There's a large button about that points you to take the quiz about each section. And then, like I said, there's that duplicated information, a large video. This section is about exploratory data analysis. So it's doing an activity in Google Sheets. There's a video, they're all very short, probably about 5 minutes at the most, going through those steps. And then underneath that is a collapsible section with a little blurb. Click on the arrow on the right to see the written instructions. So same information, just provided in several different ways. We also wanted to highlight the partnerships that came out of this project. And I want to start by really crediting Christy and Michelle's listening tour that we mentioned at the beginning with strengthening ties and creating new ties. They built relationships and got faculty buy-in before the modules even existed because they were asking for input from the very beginning. And that's been a real strength of the project. We listed out the REU programs that are now requiring this are biotechnology, industrial and systems engineering, civil, construction and environmental engineering, and computer science. There are also departments that are sharing this informally with their researchers, and an unexpected implementation with the Graduate Writing Center, who's now offering this as an asynchronous remote option to earn credits towards a certificate. And finally, I wanted to highlight our internal partnership. Christy and Michelle are part of research engagement. Natalia, Walt, and I are part of data and visualization services. And so working in between those two departments has been really positive, rewarding experience. I can say specifically from the data and visualization side, we really appreciated the chance to be involved with that information literacy instruction right from the very beginning in a way we don't always get to interact with researchers. Finally, to show some of our plans and future applications, we have fully launched the revised version in fall 2021, and we're expecting to see even more usage over the next year as this is implemented into programs. This is also intended to be a living, responsive resource. We know that things like this can go out of date really quickly, and we don't want this to be static and immediately useless and out of date. We're committed to maintaining it, keeping those videos and instructions up to date as we need to, and continuing to take that feedback. And then applications going through this process we've just found it to be successful and also liked the Google Sites tool specifically. So we have been using these ready-made infographics and videos for pre and post instruction and pre and post consultation, depending on what the person needs. And thinking about expanding this, especially in our data and visualization services, where we do a lot of tool-based instruction, thinking about how to make this part of our asynchronous instruction. And that's all. Thank you for your time today. I'm happy to answer questions during Q&A, or our emails are here if you want to contact us afterwards. And I will put this link to the modules in the chat as well.
That was great. Thanks so much. We do have some questions in the Q&A. Can you all see those, or would you like me to read them?
I can see them. I'm happy to read them if that's all right. Everybody.
Oh, yeah.
First one was from Chelsea. How was this marketed?
I can take that. So mostly we marketed it through email. We'd already built some connections in our first listening tour, and we just, once we developed the resource, we shared it out with all those connections and asked them to share them with their communities. And we found that to be very effective because we'd already automatically built the buy-in. And we also did some marketing through our social media through the NC State University libraries.
The next one on here, did you work with instructional designers in the creation and modification to the modules? And this will be a pretty quick answer, I think, so I'm happy to take it. We didn't consult any external instructional designers. We used some of our own internal modules we've worked on before, workshops we pulled from past instruction materials that have worked well, and that maybe some of those we got outside help with, though. Well, if I think of a specific example, I'll bring it back up. I think that could be something that we work on in the future, is working more with instructional designers at NC State, really fine-tuning some of those things to make sure it is as accessible and useful as possible to the researchers. But anybody else want to add to that?
I think you covered it.
Next, a question from Chelsea. Can you speak more on how the certificate implementation happened? Having it be for credit is fantastic.
Yeah, I think you're talking about the certificate process we have with the graduate writing school. Yeah, so that happened. We already had a previous relationship with them. We teach what we call engineering cafes, where they teach the writing portion of how to teach engineers how to create things like literature review for a dissertation or theses, and we teach the library portion of that. And so just in our relationship, our pre-existing relationship, we shared that we already had developed these resources. They were also developing an asynchronous program, and the two just went together perfectly.
I think we have time for that final question too.
Okay, the final question from Jen. Other than Google Sites, what other technology did you use, for example, for video creation? Yeah, go ahead, Natalia.
No, I mean, we can kind of add things together, but so we have, NC State uses now Panopto, which is like our video creation and sort of hosting tool. So that was sort of how we did that. I would say Google Colab, Google Sheets. So like relying on some of these tools that I think we teach and are also like pretty good in terms of translating to teach remotely and asynchronously. Are there other tools I maybe forgot that might be important?
Those are the main ones I can think of. And I'll just add as a final thing with the video creation that Panopto, other tools do this as well, but it made it really easy to edit captions and to add those integrated right into the video. So if you can find a good program that does that, I'd really recommend it.
Oh, and we use Google Forms for a lot of the assessment. So played around with kind of setting them up to do that.
Great. Thank you so much, the whole NC State team. That was terrific. And now we'll go into our third and final talk for this short talk session. Let's see, we have both our panelists ready. Great. Okay, I'm especially delighted today to introduce Angela Bardeen and Michelle HaZlett from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill Libraries to talk about data support for undergraduate research.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for having us here this morning. I'm Angela Bardeen, and I'm the Behavioral and Social Sciences Librarian at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And I'll be joined by my colleague, Michelle HaZlett, who is our Numeric Data Services Librarian today. And we also want to acknowledge our colleague, Kayla Olson, who was the third team member on the project we're going to be talking about this morning, which was a study around data support for undergraduate research in the social sciences specifically. Next slide, please. So this project was focused on teaching undergraduates with data in the social sciences, and it was a national project that was coordinated by Ithaka SNR. And for folks who maybe haven't worked with Ithaka SNR, it's a research and consulting service that releases public research reports and offers support and consulting services to libraries, publishers, and other scholarly organizations. And they coordinated this national study and offered support in the way of trainings around methodology and around conducting the research. The national study included 20 participants. There was also another study running parallel to our study supporting big data in research, and the methodology trainings that Ithaka provided were jointly conducted with both of those projects. And our local project ran from May 2020 to October 2021. And there's a list here of the 20 institutions that participated in the teaching part of the study. Next slide. So just a little bit of background information about our institution. University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill is a public R1 research university. As of fall 2020, we had about 30,000 students. About 65% of those are undergraduate students. And we had a little less than 4,000 faculty, giving us about a 14-to-1 ratio. And that's actually, those numbers are about 2 years old, so they may have changed a little bit. 87% of undergraduate classes have fewer than 50 students. However, there are some interclasses that can exceed 400 students. And there's a new offering to the general education curriculum that includes a 1-credit data science component, and that I believe has a cap of 250 students. Next slide, please. So this, for our local iteration of this study, we had 3 team members, 2 librarians, myself and Michelle, and a graduate student from our School of Information and Library Science, Kayla Olson, who has since graduated and is now working as an academic librarian in Wisconsin. We had 13 faculty members who participated in the study, and we interviewed them from October 2020 to January 2021. And it was a range of professors, a range of tenure track professors, and also 1 lecture teaching professor as well. Participants were recruited from all social science departments at UNC-Chapel Hill, and our recruitment process involved preliminary interviews with directors of undergraduate studies in the social science departments, as well as working with social science subject librarians to identify potential participants to invite to the study. Participants that, or recruits that agreed to participate in the study were from the departments of anthropology, economics, geography, information and library science, city and regional planning, political science, public policy, and sociology. So Ithaka provided a semi-structured interview guide, which we have deposited in our local repository, and we can share the link for that for anybody who's interested in seeing those questions. The guide was structured around 4 major themes. So getting background information from the faculty we interviewed, information about how they get data to do their teaching, how they work with data in the classroom, and what kind of training and support they have and they need to do this work teaching with data with undergraduates in social sciences. The guide included questions and potential follow-up questions, and gave interviewers some flexibility in how we conducted the actual interviews.
So the major themes of our findings were grouped into these 2 broad categories. The challenges that instructors faced in teaching with data, particularly around these 3 things: the student baseline knowledge, what knowledge the students came into their classes with, their often apprehension about working with data, and then the technology issues that they ran into, and then ideal outcomes that they had for their classes, which kind of broke down into the work they do to scaffold learning so that students have an easier time picking up the material, different challenges with finding data to use with class projects, ethics, which came across in a number of ways, and then data as a workforce skill, where a lot of times former students would come back and tell these instructors about how the skills that they gained in their classes helped them out in the workforce, either with getting a job or with getting promoted in a job once they were in one. To talk a little bit more about the ethics topics, there was really a wide range there, from helping students understand, data may be available, but is it really ethical to use those data? Some instructors talked about teaching messy data as an ethical issue, that they felt like they weren't doing their students any favors if they only gave them sort of cleaned up data, because once they get out in the workforce, they're going to have to deal with messy data. So quite a range there. In terms of our recommendations for the library, we didn't really put anything in our report that wasn't possible. So we didn't emphasize the possibilities. These are possible actions, because we feel like we can do all of these things. We didn't put anything in the report that we thought was impossible. But the first and perhaps most important one is outreach. We found that going into these interviews, a lot of the faculty did not know that we were already offering some of these services. There were, some services that were very well known, but others that were not so much. Then the other 4 areas of our recommendations were in helping instructors prepare for teaching with data. Of course, all the people that we spoke with during this project had to already be using data in their classrooms to sort of qualify for the interviews. But if other instructors want to start using data, I've heard this theme in some of the other presentations, that they may need more assistance to convert their course. Extending course-specific and direct student support. We already do a lot of this, both in terms of our functional librarians, the people who focus on GIS mapping, data visualization, and so forth, but also in our subject librarians who already talk to courses about data literacy issues. But making that more well-known to faculty maybe who aren't using data in their classrooms yet. We have a service desk already where students can come get help with GIS projects, finding data, that kind of thing. So promoting the availability of that now that we're hopefully coming out of COVID, that desk is operating again. So reminding faculty that it's available to tell their students to come get help. Expanding workshop instruction for working with data. We offer quite a wide variety of workshops. We'll share at the end the URL to see the list of our events and to get to the list of our past events. And we're always looking for new topics. We added one this year for Open Refine, data carpentry's topic, and also one for managing like file management for humanities researchers to broaden our base of the people that we're sort of appealing to. And then growing data collections. This is a challenge in these budget times, but there are tons of resources that we already have, subscriptions to databases like Data Planet and Social Explorer, and lots of open data from government agencies and organizations that collect these on particular topics. So helping people find the data that they need, and then also access data collections, perhaps through APIs or text mining. Those services are also already available. So this is a, thank you. This is a list of the sort of more specific recommendations that we made in the 4 points of need that we saw. And I know that this is going to be difficult to read, so I've broken this out into multiple slides for each stage. But what I wanted to point out here is in the blue circle, each of these kind of contributes to the next. So this is really a way of growing the data sophistication across campus over time. In the first kind of stage, addressing instructors who need help getting started with using data in the classroom, that we can promote existing services so that they have more support getting started. In particular, that last item, the Center for Faculty Excellence offers a grant on campus for course instructors who want help, monetary help, to redesign a particular course. And also our scholarly communication officer in the library is available to consult on legal issues related to all kinds of things, intellectual property, whether a faculty member could share the data that they have for their research with students, that kind of thing. Then various services for students new to working with data, various services for particular courses, ways that we could expand or extend the way that we're already operating to support those folks. And finally, support throughout the academic career to offer lots of support for students who want to grow their skills outside of classes. This is completely non-credit, but we have great attendance at all of these workshops. We're going to be publishing our results in 2 ways. Ithaka will publish the national report. They're expecting to get that out before the end of the year. And then we have a book chapter that'll be coming out in the spring. I'm kind of assuming late spring, but academic libraries as partners in data science ecosystems may be of interest to a lot of folks in this audience. So we can now take questions.
Great.
I kind of rushed through those recommendations. So if people have more questions about that, we can certainly go back.
We have one question that already came in the Q&A.
So yes, the workshop events are open to the public. We've had some attendance from non-UNC librarians, so that's been kind of fun. And people are welcome to register. I'm going to exit out of the slides to be able to copy some links into the chat. I have to move my laptop to do that. I don't think you see sick. So there's the GitHub link for some of our workshop content, specifically R and Python and Excel. We found that students are, even if they're attending in a live session, they very much like to have access to the workshop materials sort of perpetually. And so we have been putting our workshop materials up on GitHub. They're not all there yet, but in terms of, other slide sets or recordings, we also have a YouTube channel where we've put up some of our video instruction and slide sets. I'm not sure if we can put those on GitHub, but we may be able to load them. So it's just a matter of finding the time to get them up.
And I see some links were shared in the chat to more of the information that Michelle and Angela mentioned.
Oh, I think I must have posted those to Walt directly. Sorry about that.
I think that's a Zoom fail, but yeah, panelists can't necessarily always share to all. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, here we go. One in Q&A.
I will say about the interview guide, Ithaka does claim copyright on those questions. So that copyright notice is at the top of that document. The other things that are included within that single deposit, besides the interview guide, are also the introductory email that we sent out to recruit participants and also the consent form. We'd highly recommend the Ithaka project. It was a lot of work, but it was never unmanageable, and it was a terrific experience working with Ithaka. And because there were so many participants, so many different institutions participating, we got to collaborate with folks at NC State and at the University of Richmond. So it was a really nice collaborative experience.
It looks like there's one more question. How did you choose your interviewees? That's a great question. So As I mentioned, we worked with subject librarians, and also we did some preliminary interviews with directors of undergraduate studies in the social sciences departments on campus to try to identify faculty that were already teaching with data in social science departments, because that was one of the requirements, was that they were already teaching with data. And then we built a long list, and we split it up between the three of us and sent out invitations. Ithaca, I believe it was a minimum of 12 and a maximum of 15, and we received 13 positive agreeing to be interviewed.
Great. Okay. I don't see any other questions coming in. Thank you so much, Michelle and Angela. And that concludes the short talk presentations for this session. We will have a break now until 11:15, and then I hope you will join us again for our next set of short talks. I was going to pop a link to the program in the chat if I could get it quickly enough.